It has to be within the heart, a listening, attentive ear. Because a lot of times we can have a conversation with a person and not say anything and just resolve all their issues by letting them have a conversation that they feel in their heart that they needed to get out. Their stress level went from here to here. Now they're able to maintain and do what they have to do to survive in this thing. And I always say in this thing called life, because it's a journey.
Welcome back to Born Superhuman. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was interviewing on the podcast, and I'm sure you watched him, an incredible Mark Rodriguez who had been a US Marine. And once you've been a US Marine, you will always a US Marine. It doesn't stop. But during the conversation, he talked about a very special man who impacted his life to take him off of the streets and a downward path and guided him to go through his military excellence and then come out into civilian life and make an impact by starting his own business. Whoa, that made me curious. Who was this gentleman? And how could I find out the undeniable information that he shared with Mark that then turned around and impacted not just Mark, but tens of thousands of people he's touched, and because of that, millions of their offspring as well. I can't be more proud to introduce you today to Gunnery Sergeant Dr. Gary Slater. Welcome to Born Superhuman.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here with you. And I pray that I'm going to give you some insight on some grounded challenges that I have accomplished and went through, and also some of the things that I've given to Marines, and not just Marines, also individuals that's out in the community that I work with as well on the civilian side.
And that's one of the things, that you served your country so people here could live free with the beauty that we do have and the freedoms that we do have that we sometimes don't realize because we get used to what we're around. But then since you came and retired from the military, you went back into public service, not wearing the same uniform, but leading with the same power. Before we get to that, tell me about you growing up. What were you like as a young boy, as a young man? What got you into the military and that foundation of power?
Well, it's funny you asked me that, because my idea of military was uncles and aunts that served, and I would say that college would have been my first choice. And I had an opportunity to go to college. Coming out of high school, I had a scholarship to South Carolina State University, because I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, a country boy, should I say. So a couple of friends of mine, that it was three of us that were in the neighborhood, and we came up together. Well, one died he got shot in a drug, something happened in dealing with drugs. And not to go into detail because I don't want to put his name out there. And then my other friend, which we all three were really close, he's locked up for life. So I made that decision going into graduation based off their experiences. I was offered that scholarship. At the same time, a couple of individuals that I knew, they were going to meetings with the United States Marine Corps. And just one Saturday, I was asked to join and to see what it looked like. I went to the meeting. It's called a pulley meeting. That's where the candidates are going to the meetings, and the recruiters are telling them, what to expect. And I sat in on that meeting, and I was really interested because of that history. And I decided that not just myself, my mother also made that decision with me, saying that, well, that scholarship is one thing, but you're going to be still part of this circle of friends, because most of those other friends, they were going to college down at South Carolina State as well. The only difference is I had a basketball scholarship, so it was paid for. A month passed, and my other friend, he was getting ready to go, and I said, hey, look, man, I'll talk to your recruiter, see if I can get down here again. I want to go. So that was probably the best decision I could possibly make is going from that environment into the Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps taught me so much. And I want to pause here because I know you have a couple questions with that, but that's physically how I got into the United States Marine Corps, based off of challenges. And most of our youth are in similar situations where they're trying to get away from one environment and get into a better situation. And I grew up not asking for anything, but I was more focused on the street than I was. And I was a great student. I think I graduated number 21 in a class of 500. So I did really great in high school. But because of that, being offered so much at a young age and never have to want, it's easier to get to the streets because there's no challenge. So that's what we're trying to teach our youth now, is that even though you may have everything at home, we still want to challenge you to be better than what you are.
No, it's a beautiful story. And in honor of your two friends, one who passed and one who went to jail, they were a huge impact in your decision. And
Yes,
so their life is honored through you, because without their occurrences and tragedies, you may not be where you are, and certainly not have the same impact, even though it sounds like you were really driven as a young man. Let me ask two questions. Where did you get the character? Where do you feel that character came in, where you were a great student, that you didn't have to have a life-changing moment to suddenly become a great student? Where did that character come from? And then when you went into the US Marine Corps, what level did you go in as?
well, my mother, she had the biggest impact. I can honestly tell you that, she worked 3 jobs, and working those 3 jobs to support 6 kids. So the effort that she put in gave me that idea that, okay, work hard, educate yourself, and you can get everything that you want in life. So I utilized that idea in the back of my head, to always work hard. When you work hard, everything else will fall into place. And that's one of the aspects that I used to teach the Marines, is that, you work hard, you educate yourself. On the back end, if the system is fair, you're going to fall into the system. So I'm going to prepare you. Once you fall into that system, now it's your time. I can't help you from there. Now I put you in a place where you can win in this game called life. And now everything else is up to you. I'm going to mentor you and guide you throughout that process. But my idea is for you to win. And I'm going to place you in a position where you always have an opportunity to win. Going into the Marine Corps, I went in at the lowest level as a private. So I started from the ground level, and sports kept me involved and out of trouble. Rodriguez, he got into a little hiccup along the way, and when I sat down and gave him an entry brief, he explained that to me, and I and I was honest with him. I said, well, sometimes it happens, but at the same time, it's what you're going to do moving forward. That's all I care about. I don't care about your past, because we all got a past. So what are you going to do with what I'm giving you to move forward? And I say, I'm going to be as fair as I possibly can. And I think over the years that I've known him, he made uh, maybe 1,000 statements that, even to Marines that were coming into our unit, how fair on the Third Marine Regiment, and Third Marine Division that I was to them. I had Marines that wanted to come from other units to work with me because of the way they were treated at their previous units. But that's a whole different conversation.
So I have to ask this question with the highest respect, always. Racism has changed over the years. It's still there, but before it was more segregation in the early days. How did you face that? Because obviously it's harder to grow. We know there's different privileges. If I got a friend whose son is a policeman and he gets a speeding ticket. He gets off the speeding ticket. I get it, just because of the connections. How did you face that, to go from going in at the lowest level as private and rising up to a gunnery sergeant that led so many people? What do you think stood out for you, and how did you address adversity?
So when you talk about, one of your points was focusing on strategy and principles to leave a legacy and impact. That was one of your thoughts that I hope we're going to discuss that on the back end or even on the front end. So when you talk about racism in the military, I read this book many years. Well, not many years, but right before I went into the Marine Corps, it was called Races and Suits. So that book addressed issues where racism has went out of plantations and went to individuals that has suits that are just like you and I. So when I read that book, I came to the conclusion that that's going to exist in our society, just like the Bible says the poor is going to always be with us. So what are we going to do with that as we move forward in our journey, which is life? So I decided in my mind that since it already exists, this is what we're going to do. We're going to educate individuals. We're going to let them know that certain things and certain points, if you're educated and you skilled at what you do, no one can hold you back, because what God is telling you is that if it's for you, it's for you. And if it's not going to happen. So as long as you stay positive, you educate yourself, you get a skill set that works for you. And we can talk about the skill set side and the conflict with that on the military side later on as well. But as long as you have those attributes, and the Marine Corps has a problem even today with racism, because what the Marine Corps does is the Marine Corps will see a situation that's racist, and then they will switch it and make it out not to be racist based off the leadership of the individuals that's in charge, instead of attacking it head on, because we know it exists. And they would take an individual that they know had those tendencies and move them somewhere else, and move them somewhere else, and move them somewhere else. That's the Marine Corps idea. And have these systems and approaches that everybody's supposed to follow, that everybody don't follow. So my goal was to make sure that my Marines, no matter black, white, green, or yellow, and we call them green because we all are the same color in the Marine Corps. And I would explain to them, yes, it does exist. And I'm going to be that buffer for you, because I'm going to take the beating and not allow you to have to deal with that. And that's what I did over the years. I took the beating for Marines that got into a situation, especially when there was conflict like that. And what I did was I tried to create an environment for even the individuals that were attacking the individuals, having an environment that everybody could learn in. And in some cases, it backfired, but in 90% of the time, it really worked out, because it's all about a point of view. And one thing that I could say that would help, that it always helped the situation, is I'm from the South. So I came from where you are in your mindset. So I need you to change that mindset, because it's not productive in what we're trying to do. And I always try, and the guys would say, hey, Gunnery Sergeant, why you constantly look mean all the time? I say, well, that's just my demeanor. When I'm about the business, I'm about the business. And I want individuals to know that I'm about the business. So don't allow my facial expressions to dictate your feelings towards the situation, because sometimes I have to come in with a serious outlook, because the individuals I know won't understand the smile. And then I know there's individuals that can understand that's mentally and intellectually stimulated, that will understand, there's a smile and there's nothing to fear. But I need individuals to know, and I tell individuals all the time that I'm a person and I never want a problem, and I'm not going to create a problem. But if you want to be a problem, I can become the problem. So I always want them to understand that I don't ever want to go into a situation where I'm creating a problem. I want to always create the solution to whatever we're trying to accomplish or goal, whatever we're trying to get to.
Yeah, it reminds me of something. All these words came into my mind as you're talking. Don't let your opinion go into somebody else's heart. In other words,
Yeah.
the way I think doesn't mean that's
Yeah.
how the person is. And wouldn't hesitate to say that you going from your initial entry into the US Marine Corps and facing that adversity gives you so much strength in lessons and understanding that so many people wouldn't experience and so wouldn't know how to lead. But I want to ask, what makes the US Marine Corps so special? I've interviewed a number of US Marines over the time on the podcast, and there's something unique and special about them. What is it?
Well, I can give you this consistency. The other services, and another thing, recruit training. I was a drill instructor, so I went through all the structure of being the teaching EDI, which is a teaching drill instructor, experienced drill instructor, the senior drill instructor, the series gunnery sergeant, and acting first sergeant. So I did all that down at Paris Island, South Carolina. So doing that, the mindset has to be, it has to have a mindset of maturity in order to develop. And as we develop and individuals develop whatever approach that they're trying to get to, only because you're dealing with just so many people, and we're coming from different cultures, so we have a different approach or a different idea of how things should be ran. But again, those SOPs, standard operation procedures, we're supposed to follow them. But I know your question is going to be, do the military follow those instructions? No. Then just being honest and transparent. No, they really don't follow those instructions. We try to figure out the best way to get the information across to whatever we're trying to teach. Now, when you go into the Army, Air Force, Marines, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force, the difference is the main is consistency, because whether you do 4, 6, 10, 20, 30, you're going to establish that discipline that's going to lead you through that whole time that you're in. If you go to an Army base, Air Force base, or Navy base, been on all, I can speak realistically because I've been on those bases. You'll notice that after their recruit training, it's more relaxed and nobody is demanding them excellence. Marine Corps base, if I'm walking, and my Marines will tell you all the time, if I'm walking and you're doing something you're not supposed to, I don't care who you work for, I'm correcting you. There's a difference in those other branches, is that they're allowed to get away with certain things because recruit training, that stress level is over. The Marine Corps is never over. Even if, I'll give you an example. I was in ADHA, and I had a young guy. Well, maybe he wasn't that young, but he was younger than me, should I say. That he was in IHOP, he was sitting down, he had a hat on, and he was by himself, he was eating breakfast. And my wife and I, walked in, and we walked past him, and I had my hat on, but he was sitting down eating, and he tapped me on the side, and he said, "Hey, Marine, how's it going?" I said, "Absolutely great, sir. How are you today?" And I noticed that he had his hat on as he's eating. I said, being a Marine, we never stop being a Marine, even though we're out. So you eating with your hat on, you wouldn't have did that in recruit training or any of the facilities that you're in. So he apologized. "Hey, man, this is not a place where we have to apologize. We're in this thing together. I'm retired now." So I'm just telling you, if you maintain that discipline, life is going to go well for you. And he was just happy. And after he finished eating, he came over and we had a quick conversation. We shook hands and he was gone. So that is the difference, is that consistency is One of the Marine Corps mottos, whereas the Army, Navy, the Air Force, it's not there. After those individuals leave recruit training, there's nothing else for them to do but to figure out whether they're going from 4, 6, 10 to 20 or 30. And nobody holds them accountable.
I'm a huge believer that the greatest culture of any business in America is the military, and at the highest level, US Marine Corps. When I was in a group and it was asked who has the greatest culture, and people are thinking Disney or they're thinking Tesla or they think all these other companies, and it came back and said, no, it's the military. It's the US Marine Corps, because it really is a matter of life or death. When you're training, the structure, the discipline, the care, the focus, the consistency could make the difference between life and death at any moment. That's what makes you so powerful, is because you've been there, you've seen it, you maintain it, and you continue to enforce it for yourself first, and then those around you. So I'd love to talk, and I know we had a prior conversation. What would be the 5 actionable, life-changing disciplines that you teach? And I'd love to go through them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or if you've got more or less, it's great.
Yeah, I noted 5, so only because you actually asked for
Yeah.
5s, and we're gonna let's start with the strategies and principles first, and
Sure.
then we can go to the actual truth and actionability insights. So when we're talking about first of all, I want to say that each service member, I'm absolutely proud of them for all of their accomplishments. Whoever is the ones that are watching your podcast, even the podcast that I'm not associated with, because I'm gonna give you a little statistics with that before I go into that. 3% of, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, 3% of the United States, individuals in the United States become service related. 1%, a little less than 1%. Becomes United States Marines. So keep that in mind when you talk about the United States Marine Corps. It's because there are individuals that will run away from the Marine Corps because of history. Nowadays it's more of a kind and gentler Marine Corps, meaning that as a drill instructor, I couldn't do the things that prior, maybe 10 years before I went to Parris Island. Those guys, I couldn't do those things. To give you a quick example of that, those guys back then could physically put hands on the recruits. During my time, you cannot put hands, it's that one arm distance away. I don't know if we ever followed it, but one arm distance away. Well, fast forward to after I left Parris Island, they created these stress cards where if someone said that I'm getting overly stressed, hey, I can hold this card up and get a buy, because that means the stress has to come down. I've never heard of that, because we down at Parris Island, it's supposed to be stressful. So, and on top of, you got the elements at Parris Island that creates more of a stressful environment, whether it's the bugs environment as well. So I want to give you that for that statistical overlook. So as we travel it into building and creating a line of impact that's going to transition lives throughout generational. And not, when we talk about generation, we're talking about generational wealth, not materially, but mentally wealth. And what I normally tell a Marine, I was taught this many years back, is that there's an imaginary toolbox. So I have them hold their arms out like they're holding a baby, and there's a toolbox. And everything that I'm giving you, I want you to place inside that toolbox. And one day you're going to pull something that I say out of that toolbox, and you're going to be able to utilize it for the good of yourself or the body. The body meaning that the group that you're in, to help them elevate themselves. So I'm responsible for laying the groundwork. That's my responsibility as a human, as a person, to lay the groundwork. And as I do that, in my mind, these are some of the things that I think about. I want to establish a greater respect for people through changing the individual vision of what success looks like. Because sometimes my success may not be your success, and vice versa. So if we look at hard work and education, which is a platform for me, well, that may not be a platform for a younger individual in 2026. So we want to be realistic with our approach with that. Also, we want to deep dive into what affects the community and establish greater relationships, no matter what color they are. We want to make sure that we establish those relationships. This will tell us what we need in the community, and especially in those undeveloped communities, like I mentioned to on the front end. And when we talk about those undeveloped communities and their needs, for example, we're talking about more grocery stores and less liquor stores. So those things have to change, and the way we change that is through our thought process. The third one is mentoring the youth through skills and education. So one, everybody's not going to get a doctorate degree. We know that. Everybody's not going to join the United States Marine Corps. I'll say that on the front end, then I'll say the other services on the back end. So not going to do that. When I'm teaching the college folks, and I'm telling you exactly verbatim what I'm telling them, is that there's going to be an opportunity where you're going to have to make a choice. You can go to school, get an education from school, which is going to support your growth. You can join the military. That'll support your approach. Or you can do 25 years at any organization within the community or in the world, and do 25 years and still be successful, because at the end, you're going to have that 401k to lean back on after 20 or 30 years. So those three options you have as a choice mechanism in order to win at this thing called life. So the fourth thing goes into that winning aspect is create an environment where the youth can see the win. So when I'm in Morris Park and I'm feeding the homeless and kids walk up and they see me with that United States Marine Corps hat on, what they see is success. They physically with their eyes can see success. So the question for them would be, how did you get to that point? Or how did you make that decision? And I have to explain that time and time again. And just like you mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, is how do I get to a point where I'm going to make a conscious decision where I want to go left or right? And left, we say that's going to be the great things that's going to happen to us in life. Or we're going to go right, where there's the negative stuff that could happen to us in life. Now I'm in the middle of that. I'm at a milestone where I have to make a choice. And what choice am I going to make at this day and time to make sure I win at this game called life? Because our success should go through our vision as adults, because the kids are looking at us. We're not looking at the kids are looking at us. So when they're looking at a picture of success, they need to see that, okay, this is what I need to, my vision should be. This is the direction that I need to go in order to be what that person is, or have what that person is. And society would tell us that, we want the American dream. Well, the American dream is not for everybody. Being able to live comfortably is the 2026 American dream, because the American dream back in the 60s consists of owning your home. Well, now you don't have to own your home. You can rent for the next 40 years and make a decent pay and live, travel, take vacations. And my concept of success is being able to take 3 or 4 vacations every year. If my wife and I can do that, we have the American dream. So, and we don't have to stress, because you're on vacation, you're not stressing anyway. So, and finally, allow a systematic approach that can sustain the future generations. So we want to make a plan, and that plan has to be an approach that's going to allow the youth to be able to utilize that system and give it to their kids, and then their kids, and then their kids, if it works. So we just don't want to throw an approach out there that they're going to struggle with. We want to research it. We're going to do our background. We're going to do our background checks. We're going to draft up information that's going to be truthful and honest about where we need this generation to go. And until we do that, we're going to always have what we have. Memphis is the highest crime rate area in the United States, one of the highest crime rated areas in the United States. So how do we convince our leaders that, yeah, we want to give classes and we want to create jobs, we want to do all these little things, but we don't want to go in and lay the groundwork, as I mentioned, and the foundation first. Until we lay a positive foundation, we're going to continue to go into this over and over and over and again. In other words, we're not going to have that consistency like the United States Marine Corps. We put something together that's going to be consistent with helping these areas that are struggling. We're going to continue to be where we are. And, the definition of insanity is doing things the same way, expecting a different result. And that different results they're expecting to be in those future generations. That's not going to happen until we buckle down and figure out why things are happening and the areas that are happening. And here we know the areas that the crime rate is extremely high. But those places, most people are afraid to go into. I'm in those areas all the time because I feed the homeless. I do clothing drives. So I do things that I have to go into those communities. So 90% of the individuals in those areas, they know me. So how can you get to know a person if you're not visible?
So I was going to say, it sounds like on that, all these disciplines that you're talking about, it's really about building the foundation of character and the willingness to work hard and put in the effort without a guaranteed reward, knowing that if you put in the effort, you will get the reward. It's
Absolutely.
impossible to miss. How much do you think, though, today, because I see this with the youth that I work with, it's a really hard task to get them away from social media impressions that money is the fix to all happiness, and I shouldn't have to work hard. Because I remember growing up, and I know you did as well, when we went out and we worked hard, we had adrenaline, we had testosterone, we had that feeling of accomplishment that you can't get without doing hard work and setting a goal, having the target, working your butt off to get there and achieving it. There's no money that could buy that. How do you feel parents or community leaders could encourage the youth to put in the effort and not rely on social media?
It's an opportunity for teaching. And I'm going to give you an example on the front end. Well, when I moved to Memphis, obviously I'm not from Memphis, I'm from South Carolina, but like I explained to my wife, is that we're going to put, regardless of where we plant our foot, we're going to put some groundwork into the community. So my boys, what I taught them was that in my day, if you cut a front and a backyard, you were lucky to get $3, $2. That's cutting the front, regardless of how big the yard was. If you got $5 for front and back, and a ham sandwich and a glass of Kool-Aid from the person that you cutting the grass for, you won. But fast forward to let's say 2021. I'll just throw a random year out there. Well, in 2021, 2026, you're going to get just for the front $50. $60 just to cut a little small front yard. So we placed the financial value higher than the person. We put money in a position where it is guiding the individual's mindset, vice their intellectual ability. So we have to go back to that. We have to figure out a way to get back to money matters, but your character matters a little bit more, because your character is what's going to carry you throughout your process of living a particular life. Because if I'm a part of the jobs that I've done is HR director, and when I talk to individuals that are want to come aboard to the organizations that I've worked for, what I explain to them is that I could care less about your past. What I want to know is what you're going to bring to this organization. What benefits, and I ask every person the same question: what can you bring to this organization to put us in a better place? And the Marine Corps should ask that same questions now that we've transitioned into, an organization that's a little different. They should ask that question as far as on the leadership side is, what are you going to bring to the body, which is the younger Marines, that's going to support them in their growth and development. And we're not talking about something that's written and documented and a document that somebody's read. We want to know what's coming from the heart. And if it's coming from the heart, then we know that they're genuinely wants individual to win at life. So I think, and the way I look at it is that, that task is extremely hard to determine how we can transition into a place that's going to allow every individual's an opportunity to win if they want it. And the vision has to be there, and it has to be written, it has to be plain. So I couldn't use doctoral information to give it to an individual, a child that's trying to develop themselves. That's not going to happen. And that's what most people are doing. They're thinking over the individual's head. And because they're thinking over the individual's head, they're blocking them. So the individuals that need the information, they're blocking them. So now you failed the opportunity that's presented. When we talk about platform, you failed to offer the individuals needed information on the platform that's given to you. You just failed those individuals. But failure, and part of my conversation with you when we go into those 5 truths, is failure is okay. But a lot of times you don't get a second opportunity with the same individuals. So to correct that, leaders, we got to be on point. We have to be honest with ourselves, because we all can't do what Mr. Dan does. And I know that. I talk a lot, but I don't talk like you. I can't. I try not to put myself in a situation where I'm gonna never talk. I will never talk about things that I don't know, because an individual can challenge you on that. Even young folks. Young folks nowadays, they're smarter, faster, and also they're a little less caring. And that's another aspect that I didn't even put in my notes, is that, we need to change the mindset to a caring aspect. Because when individuals care about certain things and care about each other, they tend to support each other. That's historical data. They're more tentative to say, okay, what do you need for me to help you with to get where you're trying to be? Well, we don't have that now. I can give you example of that as well. Back in my day in the country, each household took care of, no matter how many houses were on the block. And where we grew up in the country, the houses were miles apart. But there was the difference, though. Those parents in those houses were like parents inside each and every one of those houses. So if you did something wrong, it's possible that you could have got a whipping from that house, and then when you got home, you got a whipping as well. So I had a neighbor in the military. I had a neighbor, and this what really triggered my mind to say that, the development of young individuals are starting to change. And this what gave me that outlook. One of the kids, my kids were younger. My daughter, she seldom came outside, and my son was an athlete. My oldest son, he was an athlete, so he stayed in the gym. So I was in Hawaii. I was just sitting around at the time, and the kids in the neighborhood were gathered on the corner, and one of the kids did something, and one of the parents came down and was fussing at all the kids at first, and then she found out that her child was attacked by one of the kids, and she started fussing at the kid that attacked her son, and the other young lady's son came out, and the statement that she made is, and I will never forget because was a learning curve for me. You better not ever put your hands on my son or my child or something like that she put it. Well, had she done that, put her hands on that child and shook him just a little bit, he probably wouldn't have got in as much trouble as he was getting into. So I found that challenging as I moved forward, and I listened to, young parents growing up, because that's their mindset. Nobody touches my child but me. Nobody talks to my child in a negative manner but me. Well, how can they learn if they don't know what they're doing wrong?
It's one of those sayings where they say hard times create tough men.
Yeah. Yes.
Women as well. And easy times create softness. And
yes.
I think when you overprotect, especially when you know the truth but you're denying it, you're actually creating a soft culture where they think they're going to keep getting away. And as Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the mouth.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely.
And right now, society's not punching anybody in the mouth because we're making excuses. But at some point, when you mature and become an adult, something, whether it's a divorce because you weren't holding up to your standard of agreement, whether it's going out and thieving because you want to get something that you think you have a right to, whatever it is, that comes from, in my opinion, lack of discipline growing up. To be proud of yourself and develop the character that says, I'm powerful enough. If I want it, I can earn it. I can get it. I don't need to deny somebody else or steal from them.
Absolutely, because the vision is plain, and if we were in another country, it'd be different. But in this country, we have which social media does it for us as well. We can physically see what success looks like. A lot of times you don't want to believe everything that happens on social media because it's designed to pique your interest. But if a young person was to look around into their community, they can see excellence. That's the difference being in the United States, is that at every turn you can see excellence. You can see things that will elevate you spiritually and mentally in the United States if you want it. So when a person says, "Oh, I wasn't afforded that opportunity," that's not a true statement, because we can make our opportunities and we can be as successful as our mind wants us to be. Like I mentioned on the front end, my success may not be your success. Your success may not be my success. But as long as we understand how to get to wherever we're trying to accomplish. I got a nephew that went through, hadn't talked to him yet, but my wife and I, we got a text that said that his he graduated from HVAC school, and the last conversation that I had with him was what I mentioned, is those three principles of being successful, and how to get to it. And he decided no military, no college. We're going to go through HVAC, a technical school, and gain the skills. And he just graduated. So I want to have, and the next opportunity I get, have that conversation with him and just put it in his reminder, in his memory, in his imaginary toolbox, that now that you got yours, now what are you going to do with that. Once you start working and you start earning a wage that's going to put you on your own, now what are you going to do with it? And I'm going to give them a couple ideas. An idea is to help someone else. Reach down, grab someone else that needs help, and give them that same advice that I gave you so they can be just as successful as you. Now we're building a future generation.
No, it's beautiful. What you were saying reminds me, though, of a saying that I love, which is, wouldn't life be amazing if it was everything we posted it to be? Right? Because
Yes.
people will
Yeah.
post and you can hide behind the truth. I know a friend of mine before, she was an accountant in an area that was very wealthy. And she said, Dan, if you saw how much debt those people live in, how unhappy they are, because it's all about the image, about how they want to be seen, not who they really are. And it takes a brave person to be vulnerable enough to be seen who they really are and not the perception. Because we know those people every month were living in stress. They didn't have freedom because they had to have the big house, the nice cars, the right clothes, the fashion. And I think people are chasing that this day, and they will never find their happiness of self until they become their authentic self. What's next on your list?
So I want to touch on to that what you just
Please
said, if you
do.
don't mind. So my wife and I, years before we got to Memphis, well, actually when we were searching for the house here in Memphis, that was a conversation that we had, and we're talking about, man, all these big beautiful houses. And one thing that I said, we don't have to be like the people around us. We just find a nice house. And she did all the legwork because I was still at Fort Lee, Virginia. I was still working at Fort Lee, Virginia. So she came here, she found the house, and what I told her was just find a nice house where you're comfortable with. Because this one thing that I know, we're not gonna compete with anybody, and you're gonna have the best car that we have. I don't care if we got 1, 2, 5, 6 cars. You're gonna be driving the best car, because I don't ever want you to break down where I have to figure out how to come get you. You're going to have the best of all worlds. So you don't have to worry about in the back of your mind competing with the folks around you, because you're going to always have the best that I could give you. So that's, again, that mindset that you mentioned is really important when it comes to images and how we're perceived as being. And we got to blame the United States for that, because in the United States, we want to be better than the next person without putting the work in. We want to figure out a way to be the best imaging person that we possibly can. And and get the work side later on if it comes. That's the reason why. And another thing I tell my wife all the time, if I can't pay cash, I don't want it. If I can't just outright buy it, I don't want it. Because eventually on the end, if I leave you today, meaning that I pass today, you're going to have to fork that. So I'm not going to leave you in a situation, because I'm old enough and I'm mature enough to know that this is only one life and we're going to enjoy this life. So we're not going to put funds into something that's not going to create something that's sustainable for both of us, not just for me, not just for you, for both of us. So my idea, my approach is really different from the average individual. And I think that has guided me throughout, this journey in life. And again, I don't just keep that information. I communicate that to anybody that's willing to listen. I give you another example. I'll give you another example really quick. I had a friend of mine that was struggling, had to mentor him because he had met him here in Memphis. He had some bad stuff that he had done in the past. So on his record, he had all this stuff, and he just couldn't. Over the last 3 years, he just couldn't find a job. I said, "Don't worry about it. We're gonna find you something. We're gonna get you, because you're a great person." Because he does mechanic. He's a mechanic, a great mechanic. Because something happens to my son's truck, hey man, I'm coming, I'm on my way. And he fixed it, and he would fix it just like that. I don't know where he gained his knowledge, never asked him, but he's very good. So I had another friend of mine that that we had a conversation playing dominoes, and she was like, I need some employees. So I said, I got a friend that really needs a job. He's trying to take care of family, and he's really struggling because he's using grass cutting, the simple stuff to maintain. He needs a sustainable job, but this is what he's looking at. She was like, oh man, don't worry about that. Tell him to call my office. Tell him to call my office tomorrow. And I had him call the office. I sat down with him the day before, gave him some interview tips, and it explained to him, certain things you don't want to say. These are things that you want to say. He ended up going into the interview. So we found out today that they hired him. And this was maybe over the last 3 weeks or so. So again, we don't just want to keep that knowledge. We want to be able to support individuals. And even if I didn't know the individual and Walmart, I'm stopping talking. My wife, I have a problem with that. I'm talking to everybody in Walmart. The times that I do. If I see someone look like they're struggling, I'm gonna stop and talk to them, even if I got to pay for their groceries. I'm gonna stop and talk to them, no matter man or woman. And my wife said I need to stop doing that because you just can't talk to everybody about your meat. So I'm working on that. It's some things that I'm working on within me, and that's another thing is that a lot of things that we talk about, especially in this realm, is that we normally don't talk about the person that's giving the interviews and the conversation. What do they need to do to change within their things that they need to change within their self to make their self a better person, better than they were yesterday, today. Those type of conversations that we need to have also because you struggle, I struggle. And the person that's to our left and right may struggle as well, but we would never know if we don't have these type of conversations. See, we're really talking about the winning aspect of life. But there are also, and this is what I want to go to next, if you don't mind. What about when things don't go your way? So what do we do? What do we do with that? What if the person is not mentally as strong as you and I? How do we get them in a place where they're at least comfortable with dealing with whatever situation that they're in? I think that's the $1 million question when it comes down to conversations.
And do you have a solution for that? What have you experienced with the thousands of young people that you've guided over many years? Is there something that you have that someone could listen and go, I'm going to try that, or I never thought of that?
Yeah, I got the perfect solution for you, but it has to be within the heart. A listening, attentive ear. Because a lot of times we can have a conversation with a person and not say anything and just resolve all their issues by letting them have a conversation that they feel in their heart that they needed to get out. So now their stress level went from here to here. Now they're able to maintain and do what they have to do to survive in this thing. And I always say in this thing called life, because it's a journey. It's not like you can just show up and be successful. It takes work and effort. But yeah, the most important part is that just sitting down and having an attentive ear and an understanding heart. And that's going to guide you through the words that you need to say to be encouraging. Because it's easy to beat a person up. Learners in the Marine Corps, and another thing that I taught Rod was, it's easy to beat a person down. That's easy. I mean, you were a drill instructor, so you know that you can beat a person down just like that with no problem. And the hard part is to uplift the person when first of all, you corrected them and you established that they did wrong. Now, how are you going to transition that into a motivation and a lifting moment to allow them to continue to win? So how are you going to do that? So those are some of the lessons that I had to teach to many of my Marines. And towards the end, and I can't remember if there were, no, I do remember, there was no lesson in developing after recruit training. So as a serious gunnery sergeant, as a senior drill instructor, I always kept that in my book of notes as that I want to get all my recruits together and sit them down and explain to them what it means to win in the Marine Corps and what it means to win if you decide to do 4, 6, 18, 20, 30 years, because the opportunities are there. So that part is really important to me, is that lay the groundwork and allow individuals to be the best that they can.
That's beautiful. So let's jump on, because I know time's ticking and
So,
you got so much information. Let's
so
jump
you,
on this. Yeah.
yeah, you want sort of those top truth and actionable insights that, for me, in order to produce an environment that can be viewed as success, I try to incorporate the following in my growth over the years. Establish goals that can be reachable or maintainable, and also maintainable. Those goals, in the back of my mind, I didn't say that, hey, I'm going to be a doctor. Coming out of the Marine Corps, that was the last thing on my mind. The only thing was on my mind was, once I get out, what am I going to do to sustain the life that I've established over the years? I've finished my bachelor's, so let's try the masters and see how that works. And progressively, that's what motivated me to go into the doctorate degree. Uh, the second is shape what discipline looked like through my vision, not through anybody else's vision, what discipline looks like. And what discipline looks like for me is doing things consistently in order to get a result that's going to allow my family to be taken care of. And I always incorporate my family in, because it's never about me. I took myself out of the scenario many years ago, and I teach the Marines, and especially Rod and the group that I had with him. I had to teach them that, is that because most of them were married at the time. That's when, take yourself out of the equation. Now, what are you going to do to maintain your family? It's a lot of energy. And I tell my friends, it's not something that you can show up today and be Michael Jordan at. No, it's going to take a lot of energy and effort. So if you endure the beatings, one, and when I say the beatings, I'm not saying the wife is beating them up. I'm saying that the beating consists of the things that you have to endure to have a successful marriage. And a lot of times don't work out, but you got to figure out a way to make it work. So that's the vision, the look of discipline through my eyes. Mentally establish what failure looks like and make improvements. So again, like I mentioned before, is that it's okay to fail. But now when we fail, let's learn something from that. And now it becomes an avenue of investing in yourself. And that's what I was attempting to get to when we were talking about the person, investing in yourself in order for you to single out the things that are causing you not to win, channel that into something that allows you to win. So, and whether it's changing your mindset, because a lot of times it's just changing your thought process and your mindset. I had a friend that, because he was locked up at one time, and same individual that I had mentioned, he hated police officers. Well, as I'm talking to him, and I explained to him, well, the police officer didn't put you in the position. You put yourself in that position to get locked up. Well, his mindset stayed the same until he needed one. So now that you need one, now your thought process changed. Well, your thought process should change even before then, because someone should have sat you down and said, hey, these guys never did anything wrong to me. They just did their job. They caught you doing something that wasn't right, and the system put you there, not the individuals, because those sheriffs and police officers are within an organization, just like the Marine Corps. It's an organization, and an organization consists of what? People. So you can't put that arresting officer, even if he did something that was out of the ordinary, on every officer that you've met over the last 30 years. It's not fair. So that's one of those improvements and developments of individual self that has to happen. Accountability for yourself. The fourth,
If I can
I'm
jump
sorry.
in there, yeah, I just
Yes,
want to
sir.
jump in there and
Yes, sir.
say I fully agree. One of the things that I teach at Born Superhuman is that when we change our perspective, it can only become honest and true when we hold ourselves accountable for our actions within it. It doesn't mean to say we necessarily have to disagree, but we have to open our mind to see what
Yes.
was my role in it. Because when we change our perspective, we also see our own actions. And most of the time, we blame others because it's either our ego that's stopping us from accepting responsibility, or we want to use an excuse, which means that we don't have to be accountable for our actions. So I love what you just said there.
Yeah, yes, sir. And a lot of times you won't see it. Just to piggyback on that great statement that you just made. Uh, Another point is that you really don't see it until someone on the outside communicates it to you. So at least 85% of the time that a person is not going to see where they're wrong until someone on the outside has communicated to them. And now it's from a different perspective.
We
So
can
yeah, absolutely.
justify, yeah, we can
Yeah,
justify everything we do, but it doesn't mean to
yes,
say
sir.
it's justifiable.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yeah. So my fourth point was I always look to improve my position through development and education. So every opportunity I get, even just having this conversation, uh, I try to educate myself and develop something within me to give me more tools inside my imaginary toolbox to use when I'm communicating to individuals that I meet throughout my journey. So I support you in all that you do. I have one more point. I support you in everything that you do. You're doing a absolutely great job of affording individuals to see a bigger picture. And we are deep diving into a place where the average, like the deep water. I used to tell my Marines, all my leaders all the time. It's hard to dive into that deep end because some people can't swim. Because if you can't swim, you're not going to go into that deep water. And when I say that deep water, it's the thought. So
mm,
that's the analogy. It's that thought. If you're going to dive into that deep end, believe me, you're going to come out with something, or you're going to stay and drown in that deep water. So we want to come out of that deep water with a thought or an idea that we've educated and matured in an area that normally we wouldn't have on the back end. So it's important that, just like with yourself, we deep dive into thoughts and ideas that's going to support these communities that really need it. So again, I commend you on all you do, and don't and my when we get to those two final questions, well, I probably shouldn't say it right now because then that'll probably throw it off. So the last thought was place individuals that are positive around you. That's going to allow you to have a positive influence. Now, on the flip side of that, if we have individuals that have negative components, create a system for them because they don't know what it looks like. So you have to create that for them and be willing to support their growth. And one of our mottos is that we will never leave a Marine behind. So in the community, we're not going to leave a person behind. So we're going to level up and we're going to bring those, regardless of what it takes, we're going to bring those individuals along with us. And we're going to give them all the resources and tools that they need to be successful. Even if they don't know what it looks like, we're going to show them what it looks like.
yeah, what do you do in that situation though if somebody wants to be left behind? For example, you could be out with the US Marines, you're in a battle, and suddenly someone deserts. You can't turn them around at that point, or
Oh,
can you?
absolutely. Absolutely not. But what we would do, we have systems and approaches that are documented. And we would make calls and establish the fact that, okay, so we're going to continue with the mission, but we're going to look for the individual. If we can't find the individual, then we're going to come together and figure out a process that's going to allow us to bring that individual along with us. So in our case, on the combat field, is totally different because the enemy is still out there. And in life, well, the analogy is absolutely clear with what you're saying. The enemy is there, and most folks don't know what the enemy is. The enemy is life, and the life that you want to live. So you got to figure out a way of getting to that place where the person is comfortable. So if the individual is fighting you and they refuse to get or gain the information that you're trying to provide for them. Now, it's your job as a leader to know that, okay, I provided the individual with all the resources that I possibly can. Now we're not going to quit on them. We're going to pass you on to someone else that may have a different approach. If they can't help you, we'll pass you on to someone else that may have a better approach. So we're gonna continually to work on an individual and not just say we're gonna quit on it. We're never gonna do that. As a leader, you don't ever quit on your Marines. And I can only talk about the Marine Corps. And even on the civilian side, I can provide them with all the information. But if they fail to take the information, every opportunity I get, I'm going to provide them with something until they say on their own, mentally on their own, I want it and I'm ready to reach for it and grab it. When they're ready to reach for it and grab that, that's on them. Now it's time for me to deep dive into how I can get them where they need to be.
There's so many times I think that people quit on themselves when others are trying to fight for them. And when I was a head coach on the Olympic Development Program, I
Wow.
realized I was working harder for my players than they were willing to work for themselves. So I set the standard. I will work as hard for you as you're willing to work for yourself, but I'll bring more to the table because I've got experience and knowledge. But what I found sometimes, I was planting seeds that weren't ready to sprout at that time.
Yes.
But at the
Yes.
right time, when they were
Absolutely.
ready, they came back and said, now I need your help. I understand what you were saying, but sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to be able to
Yes.
bounce back.
Yes, absolutely. And that in all cases, in a perfect scenario, we would think that, we've been battle tested. So now we think that if we say it, the individual's going to automatically take to it. Well, realistically, that's not going to happen. So there are individuals that life has beat them down so bad that in their eyes, we also, as the world, are looking like the enemy as well. So the first part is opening up that line of communication and understanding, and then we can attack the problem because a trust mechanism has to be there. And
It's a
until we
great point.
establish that trust mechanism, then there's no way we can get that person to where they want to be, especially with as a high visible level as the Olympics. There's accountability, not just accountability, is an image that goes along with it. And most individuals, especially if they're young, they don't understand that. They only understand I'm playing in the Olympics. I'm excited. I'm playing in the Olympics. That's all they understand. They don't understand all the things, the components and the elements that goes along with it. So yes, sir, that's extremely important that we establish those guidelines and those disciplines, should I say, because once you establish that discipline, that realm that you're mentioning, is that once you establish that, the focus becomes clear. And
And
now
that's
they're
what
buying into your process.
and that's what you were saying earlier, consistency. You've got to
Yes,
be
sir.
able to be held accountable. And sometimes it's really hard to be consistent, but you let it down one time and you can never come back and be
Yes.
respected in the same way because people see a weakness. And it doesn't mean to say we have to always be strong. We're
Right.
always strengthening, but I really feel that if we change our mind for one day and then expect everyone to come back, we've let the system down.
And I find that, like I had just mentioned to you, I find that as a leader, that's absolutely extremely, extremely hard because you're establishing a foundation that has to be maintained not only for a week or two, you're talking about years. You're talking about years of being able to sustain or being able to put yourself at a level of discipline that has to overcome all the things that's around you, that's coming at you. And that's the reason why I said, I commend the Marines and what they're doing, and just the military as a whole, because everybody don't see things in a light as you and I do. So as those leaders that are out there trying to teach and train and get individuals to understand the bigger picture, it's a challenge.
Sure.
And nobody ever looks at the leader having problems. All they see is, oh, well, he's doing great. Well, she's doing great, amazing work. But behind closed doors, they're breaking down. So nobody ever looks at that part. And I think, and because we're having this conversation, that's going to be something that when I talk to leaders of the future, that's going to be always something that I include in my conversation is, what are you doing? And I think I mentioned it to you on one of the podcasts. I asked my Masonic brothers, is that do something for yourself this week? And I'm going to come back in our Zoom and I'm going to ask you what you did for yourself. Because a lot of times, taking care of yourself on the front end helps you take care of others. It's hard to struggle on the back end and then take care of people on the front end, because now you're in a threshold where it's an opportunity for you to collapse. And you don't want to collapse in front of individuals, or like the young folks say, crash out in front of your crowd or your audience, regardless of who it is.
What's the last point you have?
Well, that was my final point with supporting and grow. You had two questions that you had asked.
Well, I'll come to those. I'll come to those in a minute, because those are so empowering, and I can't wait to hear your answer or answers. One of the things that I've found, and I hold you in this place, the greatest leaders are not the ones with the most followers. The greatest leaders are the ones that create the most leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They can create, and that's just a part of it. Creating great leaders is one thing. The other part, aspect of that, is creating opportunity for yourself to develop. So if self is not developed, it doesn't matter. You can create amazing leaders and then not have within yourself the support that's going to allow you to grow as well. Because the idea is that you want your leaders to outgrow you, to be better leaders than what you are. And I think, if we channel back to over the years, I think I've done that. I put the work in to make sure, and you can see one, because the one you communicated is Rodriguez. You can see through him that the work that was put in formed and shaped him in the great person that he is today. And part of that is, and I had to actually develop the community side afterwards, because there wasn't a lot of opportunities for the guys that I had with his group for community service. Not the way that I came up in the Marine Corps, because everything was based on the mission in Hawaii. So yeah, as we develop as leaders, it's important to make those individuals the best. When we talk about leaders, the best people they possibly can be. And the flip side to that, the military, once they exit the military, then they don't have a problem with adjusting. And that's what we're having now. We have a lot of individuals, military, regardless of the branches, having a problem with adjusting. So, so you're absolutely right about that. Leaders want to be made, but let's not forget about the person that's doing the developing as well.
Listening to you talk, what comes to mind, we have to have an ego to want to be our best. We
Yes.
can never have an ego to hold others back. And this is, I want to read this to you. I've had this, I've never read this out. This was on Ronald Reagan's desk in the White House, and I put it on my shelf here. It says, "There is no limit to what a man can do or where he can go if he doesn't mind who gets the credit."
Yeah, and it's funny you said that because, and Rodriguez probably have told you this, but I've never taken a award, never ever taken an award unless my peers and my Marines hadn't received one first. Never ever, even till today, I've received thousands, and I would ship you to my wall. I've received at least 200 since I retired awards, and I've never accepted an award unless my peers have received or my subordinates have received one first.
Amazing. I want to ask the first question that I posed to you.
Yes, sir.
What is the one thing that you would like people to take away from this talk that could really impact their life?
It's extreme, and this is extremely important. So I need the audience to move close for this one. Don't quit. When you fail, it's just a doorstep to your next level. Never, ever quit. Keep fighting, because every opportunity that you have is an opportunity to win, even when it's a failure. Because a failure is the only opportunity to succeed or win. All we need to do is channel that energy.
How do people take that? Because our perception of failure means quitting.
Yes, absolutely.
But how could you then take that? And I, again, love what you say and said right there. We take that information and we can pivot to find
Yes.
the way to win. How would you advise people to take the down beating that we're feeling or that we see as failure and the self-disrespect that comes at us when we think we're not good enough? How would you tell someone to focus back in, use what you've got?
Well, it's extremely hard, because when a person is to the point where they want to quit, one thing that they forget is that in failures, that opportunity to determine what put us in that position to fail. Now, and normally what I tell individuals to write it down, because you write it down is clear, and take whatever structure that we utilize in that failure, transition that into something that's going to make us successful. Because we got to take that failure and break it down and not do the same thing. And that's where I was talking about doing the same thing over and over again. So if you do that, you get the same result. So now we want to take that failure, write it down, and figure out where we went wrong. And wherever we went wrong, we want to transition that into change that aspect of it, and we're guaranteed to win on the end, because we've already figured out what put us in a position to fail.
So what you're effectively saying is remove the emotion of what
Yes.
we faced. And when you write it down, it now becomes more about clarity. And when you have
Yes.
the information, now you can take the right steps.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And the steps may be a little longer. And that's okay. Even I can give you an example. Getting a doctorate is much harder than it is getting a master's. Getting a master's is much harder than getting a bachelor's degree in whatever field it's in. So there's an opportunity to quit at each one of those levels, because it's easy to say, okay, well, I got my bachelor's, I'm done. Okay, I got my master's, oh, I'm done. Oh, I got the doctor. then I'm done, which in theory, yeah, I am done because it's not like I'm going back there. And what's funny about it, we're having this conversation. I was telling my wife, I said, since I'm retired, my daughter said, if I say something twice, that means it's important. So I'm retired. That means that it's important. So, let's just. I had a conversation with my wife, and she's like, "Well, what are you gonna do? Just sit around the house and watch Netflix?" I said, "No, I was thinking of going to HVAC school." She said, "Yeah, you should just do it, just try it and see how you like it." I said, "I got enough certificates and certifications." She said, "Yeah, but that'll get you out of the house." So yeah, so that development portion, we should never stop learning. That's the key to living life. Never stop learning. You can learn from anybody.
Absolutely, 100%. There's a saying that I love that I use. It says, a goal has to be greater than the effort it takes to achieve it,
Yeah,
or why
yeah,
put the effort in. So I tell people, set your dreams. And if you can dream it, you can do it.
right.
We're so incredible. We're born superhuman. We have so much ability and talent to work with other people that have other strengths that we can achieve anything.
I had when I was in drill instructor school, it was well, she was a gunnery sergeant at the time, gunnery sergeant. She ended up being a sergeant major sergeant. And she used to tell us all, because the drill instructor school was one of the hardest and demanding schools in military altogether, in any one of the services. And what her words were, if you can see it, you can achieve it. That's the vision. So think about it, visualize it, see it, and then work towards it. I
And
really
you,
didn't get it in DI school because I was getting beat up. But once I graduated and I started really getting into recruit development, then I understood what she was saying. So there's a process in everything that we do, and we're trying to work towards how to be the best person we possibly can.
I think you're an absolute, I don't even think, I know you're a shining example of see it and you can achieve it.
I
Because look at
appreciate you,
what you've
sir.
done.
Thank you so much.
Where do you see now your legacy? If in 50 years' time you wanted to leave something for generational impact, how do you want to be remembered? And what would make you the most proud?
So the one thing is securing the generational success. And again, we on the front end we talked about generational wealth, which in our case, the wealth is the mentality of being successful, not the financial end of it. So securing generational success through the footprint that I'm going to leave behind. And what I'm going to attempt to leave behind is that hard work means something. So if you work hard at what you're trying to do, you'll get everything that you want in life, and no one can stop you. And like the Bible tell you, what is for you is for you. I mentioned that on the front end. No one can take that away from you. So keep working hard at what you do, and it would happen. Life is going to happen. And again, we always remember that my American dream may not be your American dream.
Gunnery Sergeant Dr. Gary Slater, it's been an honor having you on here. You're a man of infinite wealth, wisdom, and I'm 100% sure that you're going to continue that impact far beyond the years that society says you should and into a legacy that's going to change communities. Thank you so much for being on Born Superhuman. It really has been an honor to speak with you. Thank you for your service, not just while you were active duty, but even just as much now, you're still in active duty. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's absolutely a pleasure having this conversation with you.
I'm sure we're going to talk again soon.